what we're hoping for is to be able to be a really good provider and educating our patients and understanding what they're going through, providing them with whatever support they need to feel empowered to make their own decision as far as what their treatment is going to be.
This is Who's This For, a communicators podcast. Each week I talk with writers, musicians, media makers, and more to get a glimpse at how they craft messages that connect. And now, here's the show.
Well, hello, and thank you for listening to Who's This For? I am your host, Scott Morfitt, and I want to thank again you right there for listening to this show. It is always a pleasure to do this. I have realized in the last few episodes that I really like doing this show because I get to have chats I want to about things and concepts that are super interesting to me. And my two guests today, this is actually the first time in my life I've interviewed two people at once, including like bands and stuff. But I want to welcome to the studio Steve and Megan from Green Bay Oncology. How's it going today?
Good.
Hey,
Happy
Scott.
to be here.
Really, I'm happy that we're your firsts as well as two
Yeah.
people coming on. That's awesome.
We'll try to be
Totally.
nice to you.
Yeah.
Thank
we'll
you.
try to set the bar high for you.
Thank you. We're all Wisconsinites here, so I'd hope so. Even if I'm in more of the Minnesota part of Wisconsin, and you're there in Green Bay in Titletown.
Yes.
So
We love it here. Go Pack.
I ask every guest, and I guess I'll let you two take turns to give me a little bit about your background and what you do in the communications.
I'll let Megan start that one out.
Well, a little bit of background. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. And so when I went off to college, I ended up majoring in broadcast journalism. So I guess as
Go
a
Blue
communicator,
Golds.
I like the news styles. Yes, go Blue Golds. As a communicator, I prefer more of like the cut and dry, right? Here's your headline. These are the facts you need to know. Let's get some commentary from, both sides, all sides, whatever that is, right? Just really understanding the subject and then figuring out how to make sure the people I'm communicating to understand what's going on, why it matters to them, and who the experts actually are, so that if they want to find some more information, they can go do that. So I was in journalism for about 5 years after college, and then I hopped into what one of our common professors would call the dark side of marketing and PR, left news for a better schedule and just a little bit less stress, I think. So I've been in marketing since 2017, started at a manufacturing company, and then have been at a couple of healthcare places now, including Green Bay Oncology. So I'm using that broadcast knowledge in writing things all the time, whether it's a blog post or social media post or even outlining a podcast, things like that. I feel like I communicate a lot, and that background comes into play.
Nice. Do you feel like it is the dark side?
No, I think news is the dark side.
Yeah.
They're working
I
around the
would say
clock.
chasing the algorithm.
Yeah, chasing the algorithm. They're working around the clock. It can be stressful. It can be fun. The news cycle never ends. Whereas at Green Bay Oncology, I'm always working on things, but I don't necessarily have a deadline, right? Those things are really flexible. And so I feel like it's just a different pace. And I would say I enjoyed the news, being able to put together a rundown and get the show going and time it out and then leave at the end of the day. And that was it, right? You didn't have to think about it at all. But you still always did because it was always changing, and you'd go back in the next day and you'd try to come up with a different take on maybe the same topic or something that changed. So I feel like it's just a different cycle, and I like the 9-to-5 office gig.
Right on. That's interesting. And see, we'll get to it in a second, but this is interesting. The difference between that daily iterative process and more of an ongoing cohesive work. That is an interesting dichotomy. I
And
hadn't thought
and
about that.
and there are certainly times where, as a journalist, you might be working on something that takes longer, but you're also working on the tiny daily, what's going to hit the 5 o'clock news today. You still have that going on. And I think, you're just able to be a little bit more thoughtful and intentional when it comes to communicating in a field like healthcare, where you need to have a lot more understanding of the infrastructure and the stakeholders and what's all at play, who does it matter to, who actually is pulling the strings, and how do we align those people.
Yeah. So, Steve, how did you
Yeah.
get into this, and how do you align those people?
So how did I get into this? So Megan went back to her origin story and talked about growing up in the middle of nowhere. I too was, I wouldn't say it was the middle of nowhere, but it was a farm in Wisconsin, southern Wisconsin. I grew up in Whitewater, which is
Oh, yeah.
between Madison and Milwaukee. Also a college town, and that is where I went to college. So go Warhawks. And undergrad there, a master's degree at Concordia University, Wisconsin, which is also north of Milwaukee. Go Falcons. And so formative in my college years, I had two professors that really kind of set the stage for me. One was an economics professor, Dr. Kirk Kim, fantastic guy, and really kind of got me interested in that business economic side, although I struggled in his class, but he was a fantastic professor. And then the other guy was in the communications department as a PR teacher, and he came from the corporate communications world. John Lukey really got me interested in that who, what, when, where PR side. And while I was at Whitewater, I had an internship in the sports information department, and I thought that's kind of what was my path, was PR, sports information. It was a rough time when I graduated in the early 90s, and there were not a lot of jobs in that area. So I kind of picked up what I could. I ended up in a nonprofit, and that kind of started my career more on the marketing side versus kind of the communication side. And so over the past many years, I've been in several marketing roles, including a Fortune 50 company, nonprofit. So I've got to kind of see both sides of fantastic career and opportunities that I've had, and has benefited my family and obviously myself. Yeah, which kind of brings me, all those experiences kind of bring me to where I am right now. I'm the chief strategy officer for Green Bay Oncology, which includes, a lot of people say, what is that? What do you do? That is strategically, I try to answer that question, is it includes the marketing and communication. How do we talk to our audiences? It also includes strategically, where do we want to go as a business? So making sure that we allocate our resources, which are all finite resources, time, money, people, and in going the right direction. So instead of kind of chasing shadows or the next shiny thing, what does our group of physician owners who are owned by, we have 10 shareholders, we have 17 physicians, 10 of those are shareholders and owners of the company. I report to the board of directors, and I work very closely with a chief financial officer, Gina, and a chief operating officer, Heather, to kind of set the direction for the company and which, where we're going and what, from my perspective, what kind of new things and how we market what we have, and then new things that we can be looking at from a business perspective.
Do you think that dealing with a few different publics with a few different goals, do you think that from nonprofits help? Because I'll give an example. I would always notice in the arts nonprofits that I was messaging the patrons on one thing, the volunteers on one thing, and the donors on a slightly different thing.
Of course.
Do you think that, like, managing those, do you find that you're managing different stakeholder groups in your current world?
Yeah, we have patients, potential patients. We have healthcare providers that are a referral source, because, that's how patients come into kind of our funnel of Green Bay Oncologies. They're referred in. So there's
Right.
that key base of making sure that those referring docs know who we are. And then there's health systems. So that's another public. So health systems and those leaders in the health systems, because we we are ingrained. Our business model is sort of, Megan has heard me say this many times, but we're using a computer analogy. We're the Intel inside. So right now I'm in the HSHS St. Vincent Hospital Cancer Center at St. Mary's Hospital in Green Bay. These are the systems that we work with. We are the Intel providing the cancer doctors, hematology and oncology doctors that power that hospital, power the cancer center. So one of the publics is that group of hospital administrators, because we're always looking at perhaps new joint ventures with other hospital systems. And in order to do those things, we have to make sure that we're financially sound and that we have the resources, we have the docs and APPs to be able to do that. And that in itself is difficult because that takes us into a whole new thing of recruiting. So it's a supply and demand thing. There are less oncologists out there than there are open positions. So we have to be very attractive in that area. So multiple publics to your point, and we try to keep those all in mind.
Do you find, and this is something we talked about before this, there is getting to be a lot of specialty practices that are under different hospital roofs, be it, I guess I'm an old person, so I have orthopedists I see every once in a while, or dermatologists, etc. Like I have all the fun things going on right now. But like, do you think that, and I'll open this to either of you, do you think that the fact that it's the subject matter of cancer brings something different to your role versus in other parts of the medical world?
Think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I think in general, every specialty is different when you're talking about the healthcare system, right? I mean, even from an insurance standpoint, some things are medically necessary and some things are just something that you'd like, cosmetic or whatever the terms are. And when it comes to cancer treatment, we're not necessarily hoping for more people to get cancer and have to come see us.
Right.
What we're hoping for is to be able to be a really good provider and educating our patients and understanding, what they're going through, providing them with whatever support they need to feel empowered to make their own decision as far as what their treatment is going to be. I think I've heard the doctors and APPs say this so many times. They're not here to tell you, you have this cancer, this is what you need to do, I'll see you next week. They're here to say, hey, this is what I see is going on with you. Here are some things that could happen. What are the options based on what I know from a treatment standpoint, whether it's medical oncology, which is your chemotherapy, immunotherapy, targeted therapy, or from a radiation standpoint, or from a surgical standpoint. This is what I know works as far as treating this particular cancer. And we can pair it with other things. So what are your goals? What do you want your quality of life to look like? What are your questions? What are your fears? What are your needs? Let's work with all of those and pair them with the treatment that works best to make sure that you feel like you're getting the treatment that you need and we're trying to heal you.
Nobody wants to hear the C word. Nobody.
Right.
But so nobody really wants to be here, right?
Right.
So, however, part of our mission is to deliver hematology and oncology care close to home. Okay, that may sound kind of generic, but what that means is we're willing to go on the road and out into maybe more rural places, or we have outreach clinics in places like O'Connell Falls and Door County and Escanaba, Michigan and Manistee, Michigan. Our docs and our APP are dedicated to go to those places because, as Megan said, they want to provide the best care possible. And it's not just lip service. They go out and do it. They sit and they listen. And I think a big difference in cancer care is this is not as transactional as, so, and there's no offense against any other provider, right? I think it's just a fact. You go to see your primary care doc once a year, right? Boom, they see you, they say, Scott, let me see your blood work. You got your cholesterol is a little high. You might want to work on that. See you next year. You go to the dermatologist. You mentioned that, you and I are of an age. We've had years and years of sun exposure. You got to go get some things looked at from sun exposure, right? They'll see you. They're fantastic. I'm glad. They're fantastic, but maybe they burn a few spots off. All right, we'll see you in 6 months. Cool. You go to, boy, my knee hurts. You go to see the ortho and they fix you up. They get you knee surgery or, arthroscopy, or they get you a replacement. See you later. See, if you have a hip replacement, we'll see you in about 15 years.
Yeah.
Answer, it is not that way. You are here and they are seeing you on a regular basis, and they get to know you, they get to know your family. And to Megan's point, they want to know what's important to you. What do you want your quality of life to be? Do you want to go through, here's your options, right? We're going to lay them out for you. What would you like to do? And because they'll tell you, I can't decide that for you, but what I can do is give you options.
Right.
And they want to make sure that I'm going to be seeing you again and again and again. We're going to get to know each other really well. So let's make sure that we're on this journey together, and let's make sure we have good communication. So I think that's a huge difference between any other physicians.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that long-term relationship before this moment. And it's interesting because I've edited the podcast that we'll talk about in a little bit for a while now. But yeah, that really is interesting just how connected your staff becomes. It's been so inspiring to me, like working with you all and just looking at what you do. And also doing a little skiing and driving through the areas where you all have clinics. But I think one thing I know that people have this notion of why rural healthcare is important, but one thing like that you can't necessarily see on a map by what you do, but a lot of the places you cover or care for are an hour from a major city, 2 hours from an airport, etc. It's not like it's somewhere that they're just like, oh, I'm going to the suburbs. I'm going to the Forest Lake. That's that. But they're like, it's literally like, no, you would have to like do a day trip otherwise. And so I think that's great that
Right.
you're bringing care there.
Yeah, and that was
when
part of our founders' entire philosophy, was to bring care close to home. So Dr. Paul Koch in 1976, when cancer care was just becoming a thing, he started practicing in like the hallways of the ER just to get some sort of practice started. And he would go to people's homes, whether they were in Door County, Green Bay, Sheboygan, all these outlying areas, the UP. And his entire mission was to bring that care close to home so people don't have to travel, because we understand that it's stressful. It's hard. We don't want you to have to travel far to get the care that you need. So that's why we have those hospital partners in Escanaba and Manistee. And those are rural hospitals.
Yeah.
Specialty providers do travel from other places, and we're happy to be that for the cancer centers, and just know that we're bringing experts who've trained at Mayo to Manistee.
And we know, I can't give you a number to quantify this, but we know that there are patients that if we weren't there in their community, they may choose to, you want me to drive how far away? You want me to drive down to Minneapolis? You want me to drive to Milwaukee? You want me to drive to Chicago, Madison? You know what? I'm good. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to let this thing take its course. I'm going to try to be as comfortable as possible, but I'm good. Well, we can provide the services for them. They don't have to say that. And maybe we can, in some instances, depending on what kind of cancer it is, maybe we cure it. Maybe we give them 5 more years with their loved ones. Maybe they get 10 more years with their loved ones, and they get to live a quality life for more years. And, that's huge. And I think that's what drives our physicians, is that opportunity to give someone that care close to home so they don't have to travel, or they don't have to make that decision. I'm not going to do this. I've been able to do that. They used to bring chemotherapy up to the UP in Upper Michigan in the back of their car. In the wintertime, they would bring it up, pick it up in the morning, put it in the back of their car in a suitcase, drive it up to the UP and administer to people and help people. That was less than 50 years ago.
Yeah.
That's probably 25 years ago, actually. So things have changed dramatically in the past 10 years.
The roads alone they must have been driving on in 20 years ago UP, I've heard were a little more gnarly than the right now UP roads even.
And they're kind of gnarly right now. Some of them are, but yeah.
Well, I think every road is gnarly in the Midwest right now with this freeze thaw that we're all going through.
This is true. And you get lake effect snow up there. And so you get 100 inches of snow accumulated. That's people can't even, you can't even grasp how much snow accumulation that is. So
it's amazing.
They do it. They're up there.
Wait, I forgot. Not everyone's positive about the snow like I am. I'm like, yeah, it's great. Have you skied it? It's gorgeous.
Yes, it is.
I've come to learn that probably clearing the snow, I maybe have a different opinion. So I'm going to stutter through to get to a transition, and here is the transition. We've been working together for a while on a podcast called Cancer Covered. It's a really unique communication device. I mean, it's obviously a podcast, but it's talking about a lot of different issues. Does either of you want to give the audience kind of the background on that show if they've never heard it before?
So the podcast was started a couple of years ago because of the desire of our doctors to, I think it started as an internal culture type thing first.
Yes.
And just to, hey, here's what's going on in the clinics. How can we be better coworkers? How can we make sure we're providing top-notch care? And then it morphed into something that became really valuable to share externally, just talking about cancer and related topics in a candid way. So I think it just opens up access, right? So we're providing a place where we bring 2 to 3 doctors. Sometimes we bring in the social worker. Sometimes we bring in a financial counselor, right? Depending on what we're talking about, we bring in those subject matter experts to just have a conversation about what's happening, what it is, why it's important, what questions we hear people asking about it. And then we answer those questions and we just put it out as a podcast to give that access to anybody who might be going through cancer or might have a loved one going through cancer, right? Things like, is cancer a death sentence? Sharing patient stories and sharing just tidbits, right? We've got one about recurrence and what if I'm scared that my cancer will come back? Just a lot of topics that are really, really important to people who are experiencing cancer. And the questions that they're asking, we're just talking about them so that those answers are accessible. And sometimes we're not even answering a question, right? There's a lot of things that are unknown or we don't have the answer to, but it's more about, okay, how do we have a constructive conversation about it? What are we scared of? What questions are we asking? How can we understand better? And what are some things we can take away in a positive way to just feel like you have better understanding? So I think as far as communicating with our various audiences, you get to know our providers, you get to know some of our staff members, you get to feel like you're in the room with them and learn something that might be, really puzzling to you. And hopefully by the end, you feel a lot more empowered or educated on that subject.
100%. If someone can come out of that with, 1 or 2 key takeaways, and we try to, as you know, we try to keep our episodes to somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes and to kind of make it digestible. And as Megan said, have the docs in there and people can hear, I think, the passion that we don't do video. Maybe we should look into that, Megan, but we don't do the video, but I think they can hear passion that the physicians have and that despite being, I hope none of them hear this, but because I don't want to give them a bigger head, but they're extremely brilliant people. They're constantly problem solving because every cancer patient is different. You and I, Scott, God forbid, if we may have the same diagnosis, but we're 2 different people, right? Even though we're guys and we're of a certain age and we have the same cancer, it may be treated completely differently. And so they have to kind of evaluate that on a case by case, patient by patient basis. Extremely brilliant people, but yet also very approachable, nice people. And I think I think people hear that in the podcast, and they're delivering information and just kind of real. And hopefully we're hitting some topics that people are interested in. And one that is kind of give a tease, one that is coming up really soon here is a patient that was a patient of Dr. Abiz down in Appleton at Ascension St. Elizabeth Hospital. And he came on and talked about some cellular therapy, which is kind of a newer treatment. And he said, I was a dead man walking. And he talks about the treatment that he had and how he has come back from that. And you talk to the guy now, you would have no idea what he was going through last summer. He's cracking jokes. He's healthy. He's happy. Like, that's amazing stuff. So I'm really excited for people to hear that one. I think hopefully that will give people some information, which is again how it started. Megan said it was about culture thing, giving people information, providing an information source. And so we're still doing that. And yet also, exposing people to a patient, and maybe they get some new information that they didn't have before. Maybe they're inspired. Maybe they learn something. That's fantastic. Maybe they laugh because this guy's hilarious.
This guy's hilarious. Yeah. I think for anybody who maybe has heard their doctor say, hey, this is the treatment option for you, or you might want to think about this, they can just go find an episode that. So in addition to what their provider might be sharing with them as far as education sources, it can just be another source of information that might answer questions a little differently or from a different perspective. So bringing those exam room conversations out into a public sphere that's available to everybody.
Oh, yeah. That's one thing I've thought about with this show that's super universal is like, nutrition when I have stomach cancer. Like, it's you guys have great nutritionists, but also someone with stomach cancer who's not in the care of Green Bay Oncology. It's totally applicable for, and I feel like most things are kept pretty universal in the show, which I appreciate.
Something even inspires someone to ask different questions of their own care team, right? You learn something and then you're curious about it. You hadn't thought to ask about it, but now that you heard this information from these other providers, now you're like, oh, I wonder if this could work, or I wonder if maybe this is causing that. So just opening up that curiosity and the conversation, really.
I love that. One thing that I've been wondering about both this show and kind of going back to y'all's role is, do you find that in the communication framework, you are sometimes I don't want to say proxy for the patient and their family, but you're sort of like asking the questions or like they would?
So Steve and I both moderate the podcast. It kind of depends on who's available, or, based on the topic, maybe Steve has a little more information, or maybe I have a little more information about the topic itself. So we kind of just figure out who will do each episode. But basically, yeah, Steve or I will be the moderator and guide the physicians through these conversations. And I think because we are not physicians, we're not medical professionals, we're going to be the first ones to stop them and say, what was that word you just used? And what does it mean? Granted, the doctors are actually really good about bringing things to if I'm talking to a patient and their family, that's how I'm going to talk in the podcast. But there are times where I'm like, you guys are losing me. Can we back up? And I think it's a pretty
100%.
good sign if Steve or I are feeling lost, that whoever's listening would probably get lost too. So then it's I think we provide a nice balance of, okay, let's back up. Can we walk through what you just said again in a different way?
And I try to reiterate. We'll say something, our host will say something, or our guests will say something, and I think we try to reiterate that. I'm like, so What you mean is, or what I heard is, and try to kind of reiterate that to A, make them think about it, and B, to restate it again. So in case the audience missed it, that we can kind of pick that up again and reiterate it. So yeah, 100%. Try to be that proxy for the audience and go, what would people want to know? Do we need to bring the jargon down a little bit? Do we need to? Yeah, because we're not there. We know our audience, while a physician could be listening to it, because I had mentioned at the top that, recruitment is a big thing. So we're definitely one of those publics that we talked about is other physicians that we might want to recruit to Green Bay Oncology. However, that's not a platform to be talking at that doctor level. It's a platform to be talking conversationally, which they're very good at.
Yeah.
But no, there's a shortage. Like I said, it's supply and demand, and right now the demand is far outstepping the supply. So we're aware of that, and everybody else is aware of that. And so anything that we can do to help attract people to Northeast Wisconsin. And I'm not going to give away our secret sauce here, but we have done very well with that. And we have learned how to focus our search for physicians. And there are certain kind of criteria that we look for. And I think that makes our practice very attractive to those people. It's not going to be attractive to everybody. If you want to live in Los Angeles and be a part of a large health system, well, we're not it for you. And we can't try to fit that square peg in a round hole. It's not going to work. They're not going to be happy. We're not going to be happy. It's just not going to work. So we want both sides. They're giving us a test drive just like we're interviewing them and giving them a test drive, and it has to work both ways. And so we're very kind of stringent on that. And we have our criteria and we know what works. And those are the folks that we would like to talk to. So we've been very fortunate to attract top level physicians here. Like Megan said, we have several Mayo trained physicians. We have University of Wisconsin, University of Iowa, Rush in Chicago, New York. Yeah, we have very impressive docs, I think.
But one thing that you must be selling people on is the place of Green Bay, the community of Green Bay. And I've been involved in placemaking a lot in my life. So it's always interesting to me to hear, what's some good things about the community? Like when a doctor's like, why should I come to Green Bay? Again, you don't need to tell me all the things, but if I'm like, what's going on in Green Bay and Escanaba, et cetera, that should bring me there? What are you telling?
I think it was 2 years ago that US News and World Report ranked Green Bay as the number one city in America to live. Again, if you want to live in a big city, if you want the amenities of Los Angeles and the issues that come with Los Angeles or New York or Chicago or whatever, or Atlanta, that's great. That's fine. But if you would like a place where there's high quality schools, there's safety, cost of living is low. You can buy a house here. A house here that is $1,000 would be $4 million in Los Angeles.
Oh,
and here, and that's a fact. And here you could, you're minutes away from, or you could have 3 acres if you wanted to, or you could live in the country. You could live on a lake if you wanted to here. That's a big thing too, is we tell people, hey, you can either live on the lake or you can own a cottage on the lake. And most people have very nice homes on the lake, not necessarily a cottage. The amenities and being able to bring up a family here, and it's sort of a joke, is but it's true. How far away is that? It's about 20 minutes. Everything is about 20 minutes, so that's not bad. Whereas, and again, I'm picking on LA, but if you live in LA and you're 3 miles away from something, it could take you 40 minutes to make that drive. Here, if you're 3 miles away from something, it takes you 5 minutes to make that drive. We've got the best team in professional sports is Green Bay Packers right here, 2 miles away from where I am right now. So you have professional sports, you have major college sports, you have nightlife as far as, theater or things of that nature. Do we have a club that we would, you would have in New York City? Maybe not, but That's okay. We've got lots of bars.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to do in that it just appeals to the right kind of people. And those are the kind of people we want. Again, we're not interested in putting a square peg into a round hole.
I think we just lean in to the small town feel, medium-sized city amenities close by. You
Right.
could drive 20
Right.
minutes and be downtown. You could drive 20 minutes and be on the lakeshore or on a hiking trail. Or so really, we kind of lean in on Wisconsin has a lot to
Absolutely.
offer. You're close to
Yeah.
a big city of Green Bay. You're not far from Milwaukee and Chicago. Granted, then it's like a day trip or a weekend trip, but you're still within a decent distance. And if you wanted to, you could fly direct from Green Bay to Chicago, right? So we have the airports too. We've got state parks, lots of natural areas, and a lot of the
Door
cities around
County.
here. Yeah, exactly. Door County.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the cities around here, I think, do a really good job of making sure they've got some cultural arts in the downtown areas and just lots to offer. It might not be flashy, but it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is very nice. And we have several, meaning I think 3 docs that are California based or West Coast based. Dr. Gayu, for instance, he's one of our radiation oncologists, grew up in Southern California, went to UCLA. He's a California guy. And he and his whole family are here now. He's like, I'll go back and visit because his parents are there.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to live there. So, it's, people will say, what about the weather? Yeah. If you live in Florida, it's 90 degrees and humid in July, June, July, August. It's kind of unbearable during the day. If you live in, Phoenix, it's 112. Here there's
Yeah.
January and February are cold. You can't sugarcoat that. They're cold. But if you like to ski, if you like to be
Yeah.
outdoors, it's not a factor. No factor. I don't think.
You got
but
the birthplace of skiing right just north of y'all, so that's pretty awesome.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have more deer in my yard than squirrels, which I love. It's fantastic. I love it here. I live in the Appleton area. We've literally gone all over the world, Europe, Asia, everywhere in between from our little Appleton International Airport. And it takes from the time you walk in to the time you're at the gate is on a bad day is 10 minutes.
Yeah.
In Green Bay Airport is the exact same way. And then, yes, you have to go, you're on your way. You can go anywhere you want and have a sustainable, good quality of life here without paying $4 million for your house.
Right.
You can buy a $4 million house if you want to, but it is going to be unreal here.
Yeah.
And you have one of the best music festivals, in my opinion, in the state over there in Appleton, too. I like that
Mile of
Mile of
Music?
Music. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. It's fantastic. And we also have Oktoberfest, which is, 100,000 people in a 1 mile area and listening to music and food. And
So normally at this time of the show, it's my job to be like, hey, guests, sell your wares. But you're not selling anyone on the notion of getting cancer, obviously, like we've talked about. But here's my question. Doing your job, what one thing do you wish just everyone actually knew about cancer or that?
I got mine. Megan, go ahead. We're probably going to say the same thing.
So I've never had to deal with cancer. I have an uncle who passed away from melanoma, but wasn't really involved in his journey. I came into this job knowing very little about cancer, was a little bit like, oh, is working in a cancer center going to be sad all the time? But what I've learned is that the treatments have come really far in the last decade, even the last 2 to 3 years. So many things have changed that it's not as scary as it used to be, right? I remember being a kid and hearing, someone at church has cancer and everybody just was like, okay, this person's probably going to die soon, right? There were so many unknowns, and granted, I was a child, so people weren't telling me all the same things. But I think knowing that cancer treatment has come a long way, knowing that the team that's here is really amazing and wants to empower patients, and knowing that we're putting out resources like Cancer Covered is really helpful. I think to me to just feel like, okay, if I did end up with cancer or if someone in my family did, I would probably feel a lot less scared than I assume I would have 3 years ago before I started working here. We can probably do a better job of sharing that it's not as scary. The outcomes are better. The treatments aren't as harsh, right? So we've just learned a lot of things over the past couple of decades through clinical research that makes it not serious, but a lot less scary and intimidating. And you have a better chance of surviving if you're catching it early, if you're understanding what's actually happening and taking the time to make those informed decisions for your own care. I think it's something that's a lot more survivable physically, mentally, and emotionally than I think a lot of people assume.
Yeah, it's really it's and shameless plug here. We did a podcast on it. Cancer is not a death sentence. And, I think exactly what Megan is saying. I think even 10, 15 years ago, yeah, that's scary. It's still scary. Do I want to get cancer? No, I don't. However, if and when that happens, because we're living longer, we're eating, you could say we're eating more processed foods, we're doing it, whatever, the likelihood for all of us is increasing too as you live long. So the likelihood that of the three of us, that one of us is going to get cancer is probably pretty high. But on the positive side, the research that has been put behind it is way more survivable now. It's way more tolerable. Megan mentioned some of the treatments are much less harsh on your body. The prognosis is much, much better than it ever was. And I think the other thing is from working here is seeing the providers and seeing how passionate they are and the research that we do here at clinical trials and getting patients involved in these clinical trials that are new cutting edge therapies and their constant thirst for knowledge and doing more is really impressive. And I would say to somebody who is going through cancer or who may be talking to an oncologist, if you don't feel comfortable with that physician, if you don't think that they're doing everything that they can to listen to you and to provide a care plan that makes sense, I would say get another opinion. And I would say that our doctors would say the exact same thing. Get another opinion, make sure you're feeling comfortable, make sure that you have a good plan forward and that you understand the plan forward. And I think, once you understand where you're going and what is happening to you and what you can expect and where you're headed, I think it makes a ton of difference. And you know that you have people on your side. So
Yeah.
I would definitely do your research and make sure you're asking a lot of questions. And if you're not feeling comfortable, go get a second opinion. Go talk to somebody else. And I think that's the power is in your hands as a patient. And there are physicians out there and nurse practitioners, APPs out there that want to help you. So make sure you're finding those people.
Thank you. I appreciate that advice. And, I'd say from editing the podcast, I noticed that when there's some success stories, the team is always the biggest thing that comes of it. And there's so many messages of people not being alone through cancer care. And I really do
Right.
appreciate that. And, I hope everyone can listen to this show because it is so important. Again, not a topic anyone ever wants to get into, but a very real topic. So thank you so much.
It
Thank
affects
you.
a lot
Thanks
of
for asking
people.
us the
So
question. And I appreciate the work you do on Cancer Covered. And I like talking to you. You're the eye in the sky, right?
I know. I
So
appreciate that. I appreciate the messages.
when we sit down before we start recording, I always tell the people that are across from me, or as physicians or patient guests, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be talking to a guy named Scott. He's not actually here. He's up here somewhere. And he's going to be editing this. So when I'm talking to him, and they're like, oh, okay. That's kind of fun.
You've had a
I
couple
think,
guests that give me notes too, I've noticed. Like, I forget who it was,
really?
but
yeah,
you've had a couple guests that are like,
maybe.
oh, Scott, you'll need to cut that out.
Yeah.
I get a kick out of that.
That's funny.
Yeah. I feel like I've
Oh.
heard that when we're recording, which is great.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. It's fun to be part of it.
Yeah,
Oh.
well, you make us sound good. And so I'll give a plug to you. Anybody that's out there that needs somebody to do editing and producing, if they're interested in getting into a podcast, talk to that guy right there.
Plugged me at the end.
Second
I
that
love
motion.
it. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. And yeah, just for doing this show and for all you do in helping people learn that it's not a death sentence. And yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you,
You're
Scott.
welcome.